Good evening, Council. Appreciate the opportunity to speak on this topic tonight. I've actually been very excited to present this information to you and to the public for some time. This is a culmination of work over several months amongst city staff within the CPID department, also staff throughout the city organization, and also a great deal of partnership and coordination with our housing partners and organizations throughout the city as well. We have a lot of ground to cover tonight, so I am going to try to move through this material relatively quickly. Usually, I have no problem with interruptions for questions. In this case tonight, I'm going to ask that we hold questions into the end, if that's okay. Let me start with just giving an overview of the contents here tonight. We're going to start speaking about affordable housing and the definition of affordable housing. Linked to that closely is median income levels and how those median income levels play out with respect to state and federal affordable housing programs. In addition to that, I'm going to touch on the economics of affordable housing development. I think many of us know that we have some significant barriers to overcome when it comes to affordable housing development. And that could be its own presentation in its own right, but I'd like to touch on that tonight because I think it's very important to help set the context. Next, we're going to walk through the top 5 findings from the Center for Regional Analysis Housing Study. I have Naomi Young here tonight, who's the director of the Center for Regional Analysis. She's available for questions about the analysis or any aspects of the data that we might have following the presentation. In addition to that, I'll try to hit all the highlights related to the interim housing strategy that is proposed for the City of Lancaster. I was able to send advanced copies of both the study and the strategy to the councilors last week. I hope you've had a chance to at least skim through those, and if you have any questions, even if it is material in those documents outside of the presentation, we'll do our best to answer those tonight as well. And then finally, just a quick transition to affordable housing project development and how that relates to the Rescue Plan Act, which we touched on last week at Council Committee. All right, so should we get rolling? Good. Okay, we'll start here with the definitions of affordable housing. And I think it's always important to start to say, in reality, affordable varies by household. We often think about affordable housing maybe in bureaucratic terms when we're talking about how to apply particular programs. But you can have a rental price for household A and a rental price for household B that are exactly the same, but that it may be affordable or not affordable to that particular family or household. So how do we measure housing affordability when you have that variation amongst households? The main metric that we use for measuring affordable housing is called housing cost burden. If a household is spending 30% or more of gross income on housing costs, that is considered a housing cost burden for that household. There's also a standard called extreme housing cost burden, and that applies when a household is spending 50% or more of their gross income on housing costs. I think it's important that we keep that housing cost burden in mind as we talk about the subject tonight. That's closely linked to median income levels. Many of us have heard a lot of acronyms related to median income. Perhaps you've heard AMI, which stands for Area Median Income. HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, uses MFI, which stands for Median Family Income. In most cases, AMI and MFI are interchangeable. They're not always, but for our purposes tonight, we'll primarily be talking about them as one and the same and focused on median family income. I wanted to touch on this table just to give us an even playing field for for the start of the presentation here. In most cases, and particularly when you're working with HUD-funded programs, the distribution of median income levels are broken up this way. So below 30% of the median family income is considered extremely low income. That typically applies to those individuals or households who are experiencing homelessness, who may be in transitional housing or permanent supportive housing. For the very low income median level, 30% to 50%, that is the next rung on the ladder. If you go a little bit higher to 50% to 80% of the median family income, that's usually defined as low to moderate income. And then finally, you may have heard reference to middle market housing units, and that is typically in the 80% to 120% median family income level. I want to take a moment to flag and benchmark the 60% median family income level. That's a very important level for us because any rental housing that utilizes federal funding for affordable housing must be 60% MFI or lower. The 60% MFI mark is also very important because we're often toggling between county MFI and city MFI. The county median family income at 60% is a little bit lower than the city's median family income. So we'll come back to that if we have any questions. But hopefully we'll keep this in mind as we keep rolling. A few words about the economics of affordable housing development. We often get questions from the public, we get questions from the stakeholders, why don't we have more affordable housing in the city? Why is it so difficult to achieve affordable housing? We've had very little new housing built in the city, period, in recent years, and we have not had much affordable housing built either. This largely comes back down to the fact that when rents or sale prices are fixed at a low income level to serve residents, it costs more to build the project than the housing developer can recover from the project. So in other words, there's a gap between the cost of construction and the cost of the construction of that housing and the return on investment. So there must be some way to fill that gap in order to achieve affordable housing. Whether it's an affordable housing developer or a private market developer, that gap needs to be filled through public funding in order to achieve any affordable housing units in most cases. Okay, we'll change gears here to the housing study that I mentioned. The title of the study is Housing Availability in the City of Lancaster and Implications for Housing Affordability. I really appreciate the work, the opportunity to work with Naomi and her team at the Center for Regional Analysis. I'm going to touch on the top 5 findings, and again, if there are more questions, we'll come back later. I'm actually going to try to run through this fairly quickly, and I have the text here on the slide for those in the audience. Finding number 1, housing affordability challenges are caused by both supply and demand dynamics. On the supply side, the available housing stock is acting as a constraint and upward pressure on price. On the demand side of the equation, housing cost burden is widespread, largely as a result of low household incomes in the city. When you combine these two, shortage drives prices up, and incomes are not adequate to meet market prevailing rental rates. Finding number 2, the City of Lancaster has a housing shortage. We've probably felt this in a lot of different ways for some time now, and the data is very much bearing this out. Vacancy rates are low, particularly when we factor in that housing age quality is likely limiting the availability of housing units. And there are a number of implications for this. One of the most important is that a sustained tight housing market will continue to cause displacement or create incentives for housing stock to be run down. We have a number of different numbers, number of statistics related to these vacancy rates, which we can get into at a later time if you're interested. Finding number 3, the type of housing stock in the city does not align with the household composition of its residents. So there's a mismatch. The majority of the city's housing was built for larger families, but many households in the city are now smaller. 56% of the residential units is comprised of single-family dwellings. And of those single-family dwellings, 83% have 3 bedrooms or more. In contrast, only 30% of city households have children under the age of 18. In addition to that, 22% of the city's housing units are 1 bedroom, but 30% of the city's households live alone. There are a number of implications here as well. This includes that there's a more pronounced burden on cost burden on single earner households, and this analysis also suggests a need for more 1- and 2-bedroom housing units within the city. Finding number 4, the opportunities to increase housing supply in the city are limited. Intentional development in combination with land use and zoning policy that facilitates housing density are critical to significantly increase housing availability. An estimated 88% of the city's property parcels already have some form of housing on it. And the 5th and final primary finding from the study is that housing cost burden is widespread, reflecting the income profile of city residents. This relates in part to finding number 1, but we thought it was important to call out that the housing situation in terms of affordable housing is a challenge for a wide range of household incomes, not just the lowest income. It tends to be the most acute at the lowest income bands, which makes sense. The median household income in the city is $45,570, but that does vary according to household type. If you look at families, the median family income is $57,800 in the city. Again, we have some additional numbers for you, but I'm trying to pick and choose what we throw out on the table since there's a lot of data to cover. All right, we're going to change gears from the housing study to the housing strategy. So looking back at what the trends have been and might be in the future, and now we're going to try to summarize the goals for the next 5 years and what program tools would be most useful in helping us achieve those goals. The interim housing strategy has 3 overarching quantitative policy targets. And again, this is in a 5-year window, so we're not going to achieve this all in 1 year. It takes a lot of time in order to do this housing work. Number 1, the city will facilitate the creation of 2,000 new housing units with the goal of at least 15% of those new units designated affordable. Number 2, the city will protect and improve at least 1,000 existing low to moderate income homes. And number 3, the city will evaluate and address every rental unit in the city with the goal that at least 85% are rated fair or good condition. I want to point out that we aim high. These are aspirational goals. None of these are gimmies. But we want to put this out there as the North Star to move toward over the next 5 years. I tried my best to make this interim housing strategy really compact and accessible for a general audience. It is actually only 8 pages long, so it's not, the scope and scale is not too big, fortunately, but it's dense. I know there's a lot packed in there. There's 5 strategic goal areas within the strategy: produce, protect, acquire, innovate, and sustain. Under each of those strategic goals, there are 3 to 4 program tools or activities that we will use to realize that goal. So in total, we've got 18 tools or activities to help us with implementation. I'd like to point out that this is an interim strategy. The reason why we call it interim is because we're learning a lot month by month. We're doing additional analysis through the comprehensive plan, and we do expect that this document can evolve if needed. So if we have to add a program tool or subtract a program tool based on performance, then we can do that. This is meant to be a living document. The first big goal in the strategy is produce. Produce housing units and new construction to meet demand and expand the number of available homes, both affordable and market rate. This is very important to the supply and making sure that we're taking advantage of those developments that are in the pipeline and getting affordable units out of those projects that are in the pipeline. There are three main tools under produce. This is the comp plan, land development, zoning, making sure that we're, is the first one. Number two is making sure we're attracting investment capital so that we can build both market rate and affordable units. And then number three, identifying and utilizing subsidy for affordable units. And we already have this kind of work in practice. A very good recent example that we feature here on the screen is the Landis on King Street project at 239 West King, where we were able to use home funding to ensure that five of those new units will be designated for low income. Landis Quality Living is also aiming to have an additional 3 or 5 of those units at moderate income, and the balance will be at middle market level. Big goal number 2, protect. Protect, maintain, and improve the quality of existing housing to help keep households safe and affordable. The first tool, our housing inspections and maintenance program, which is one of the biggest investments we make as a department. The second here is the lead remediation and healthy homes program. The city lead safe program is aiming to remediate and improve over 700 homes over the next 5 years. The LGH Penn Medicine program, which is a complementary program, is aiming to improve about 460 units over the next 5 years. And then finally, the critical repair grant and loan program. So all of these fall under the protect goal. Goal number 3, acquire properties and redevelop for the express purpose of neighborhood revitalization and affordability. We feature a few tools here: the Redevelopment Authority of the City of Lancaster, the Land Bank, and then what we're referring to as city-led conversion. So this means that the city will identify and facilitate select properties for affordable housing and mixed income housing development. A great example here is the work that we're doing on 213 College Avenue. That happened through a donation of land from UPMC, and we were able to arrange a partnership with HDC Mid-Atlantic to build an affordable housing project, not yet built, to plan for an affordable housing project with 64 affordable units at 20%, 50%, and 60% AMI. I'd also like to note here that we've included transitional living facilities as one of the tools within Acquire, because we have recognized that we have an additional need for 40 more transitional units within the city. And that could be a new facility in its own right, or it could be improvement or expansion to existing facilities, such as the Tenfold, TLC, Transitional Living Center, or the YWCA housing units in their building. So there are a couple examples where that's happening, but we may need to expand that overall portfolio. Goal number 4, innovate. Innovate by exploring emerging housing design types, which may facilitate lower cost housing units. Again, we've got 4 program tools or activities here. The first is home sharing and community living models. The second is accessory dwelling units. Third is tiny homes. And the last is reduced parking requirements in target locations, such as the train station district, the area directly around the Amtrak train station. We do feature here in the slide our first tiny house in Lancaster City at 765 Joseph Street. This project was not permitted by right, but involved a design review and approvals by city commissions. The result is a 255 square foot freestanding structure, and the project all-in cost was approximately $50,000 to build. Okay, last but not least, thank you all for hanging in with me. I know this is a lot of material. Goal number 5 is sustain and foster housing stability and neighborhood vitality. The first program tool I'm referring to as safety nets. This really refers to the emergency rental assistance program and the eviction prevention program. Next, home ownership protections. The third is pathways to home ownership, and the fourth is homeless shelter resources. On the slide, we feature one example related to pathways to home ownership. Both Tenfold and So We average about 80 down payment assistance loans annually. 40 of those loans are in the city. They are 0% interest and have no term. And if you look at the program as a whole since 1994, on Tenfold's website, they call out that over 2,300 individuals have purchased a home as a direct result of working with Tenfold since 1994. So this is an area that we want to continue the success and possibly expand depending on funding availability as well.